Tony D and Little Jones somewhere in the house, and this is a screenwriter's take on episode 2 of The Penguin. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Check out my books. The links are in the description. Comedy horror in South Jersey. It's the Pineys, books 1 through 16, available at Amazon.com. Don't forget, Kindle Unlimited is free. Okay, so as always, I'll do my non-spoiler review and then the spoiler review. Didn't like this episode as much as the first one. Probably because I feel like they changed Vic's character a little bit here. And Vic, I do like that Vic is being, to some extent, mistreated by Oz, that he's very sort of arbitrary. He's not very nice to him. A lot of this tied into Sophia's character, who's pretty good. It's got a lot of trauma, so they're building on that. And but overall, I felt like the first episode was stronger, so I would give this like an 8. The intrigue is still there. I'm still interested in seeing more. They're building on what's gone before. But I'm not so sure how much longer they can keep these balls in the air. They are trying to play the characters at the height of their intelligence. But Oz seems to run circles around everyone. And some of the stuff he does, I don't know if a guy that smart would take that kind of risk. I do like it when he changes his plans in mid-plan. I think that's pretty good. That shows a lot of thought put into the screenplay. But the actual events themselves, I don't know. Not so sure. The Falcons don't seem to do much in this episode, in terms of their business, And their business seems very one-sided. For all the money they have, they seem to be very hands-on. A lot of them. So that would fly in the face of, say, a show like The Sopranos that was more grounded in the reality of organized crime. And this show's trying to sort of match that level of grounded reality, and it's not quite there. But, the Batman just disappears on this episode. So this is the first episode with really not any mention of the Batman. They mention the wall, the retaining wall going down and crime going up, but that's about it. So yeah, I still okay. Would still probably continue with the series. I'm hoping. My hope is it gets better, and the stuff I'm seeing from the first episode, and to some extent this episode, ties in a little better. Okay, so let's get into the spoilers. Spoilers ahoy. Vic's my major problem with this episode. He seems like he suddenly has a very bad stutter. I think I remember maybe one time in the first episode he stuttered, but it almost seemed like it wasn't even a stutter. It was more like, he just got nervous in that moment. Now it seems like he has a full-blown stutter, like an actual handicap of sorts. So first act, and a lot happened in this episode. So first act, they're doing this drug deal, and Oz is going to betray his family to the other family, and they take credit for Alberto's murder and agree that, okay, using Oz's knowledge, they're going to knock over and steal all their drugs. That goes belly up when John Vitti, shows up and forces Oz to ride in the wrong car, and but even that doesn't matter because when they get to the when the alternate family gets to the car, Oz has already adapted, and then he has to adapt again. So that part of it was kind of cool. Like it went back and forth. He just keeps switching sides because he's such a snake. But what held true in the first episode was the other family, the Maronis. The lead guy didn't like Oz because he can be bought. He's not loyal. And what mob guys have the uncanny ability of doing is sizing up people. And so far, none of the Falcones seems to be able to size up Oz like the Maronis did. And the Maronis size him up, but they throw in with him anyway. So I think it would have been better had they just taken credit for the murder and taken Oz's advice with an intent to murder him later. Like, I was fully expecting when they made him ride in the lead car, that they would blow up the car he was supposed to be in. And then Oz would be like, oh, crap, they're going to kill me. But they didn't do that. So then they get into a big fight over the drugs, and then Sophia's... I'm not really sure her position in the family other than being a relative at this point. So she seems to be a little involved in the family business. And then, the guys who are actually running the family are like, all right, settle down, Sophia. And it's not clear yet in episode 2 if Sophie had any real juice within the family. Like, if she is literally just a mentally ill member of the family, I don't even think they'd let her in the room to hear any of these conversations. They seem to have an utter lack of compartmentalization in the Falcone family. And so that sort of bothers me because their family dynamic seems a little vague. It's kind of like the writers put all their eggs in the Oswald basket and they never kind of flesh out the Falcones other than, they're mob guys. So then Sophia hires a drunken or an addict cop to do some searching, and he ends up kidnapping one of the Maronis guys so they can torture him in the basement. Then the funeral happens for Alberto, and he shows up at the funeral. He ends up in the basement of the house during the reception for the funeral, which, again, it's a lot of things coming together. So then Oz gets kidnapped by the Maronis, who are mad that they weren't warned that one of their men has been kidnapped, and they're ready to kill him. And then he has to give up these compromising photos of Vitti, who he was going to blackmail, he was going to give that to the current boss of the family, and then make him take the fall for Alberto. So he's constantly shifting as the ground shifts beneath him, which I do like. But, there's, on the one hand, there's a lot of moving pieces, but on the other hand, they don't seem totally authentic. They seem a bit, I don't know. I wish, one of my problems with the Vitti character is he's a character actor I've seen in a lot of stuff, and this is the first time I've ever seen him in an organized crime role. Like, never. He's usually the wimpy guy. Like, that character actor normally plays like the wimpy guy, or it's usually in comedies. It's weird to see him in that mafia mode. Like, I was expecting, like one of the Sopranos guys or someone like that to have a real sort of mafia vibe. But like Oz has that vibe, maybe the boss, maybe Sophia, and maybe the Maronis to some extent. Um, Anyhow, there's another bit with Oz's mom and right before the funeral, and then along the way, Vic is just stammering, stuttering. Then Oz gives him a bunch of jewels to plant in the car of one of the other mob bosses. Now, this seems like a terrible plan for multiple reasons, because he has him do it at the house where the funeral reception is. And if you know anything about organized crime, these guys are, number one, they have tight security because they need it all the time. But especially at an event like this, because those guys, there have been hits at funerals on some of these guys. I mean, not in the show, but I'm just saying in real life. The other thing is, FBI guys watch funerals when organized crime guys die, because they know all the guys that attend are usually in the family. And a lot of times that allows them to identify soldiers that they haven't even heard about yet, or to get a better idea or an idea of the hierarchy. So that seemed like a really dumb place for him to like break into a car and hide the jewels, on top of the fact that the car was just open. Right? So Vic gets to the car and it's just open. Like, he doesn't have to steal the keys. How does he even... that just seemed dumb. Like, if the car was locked, what was Vic going to do? And then on top of that, he gets caught and he runs away. And he somehow gets away. I mean, basically, he just gets away. And they don't address how. These are mob guys. They would not let him get away. No way. No way. Now, like, what could have happened is they could have caught him, and then, they don't know who he is. So when they find the jewels on him, they assume he stole it out of Vidi's car and then tie Vidi to the jewels anyway. Like, he ends up accomplishing the mission, but in the end, it's like, well, he got caught, and now Oswald can't use him as a driver, because if they see him, they'll realize Oz had something to do with it. But they don't do that, so he gets away. And then Oz initially had some sort of crazy plan to free Maroney's guy from the basement. And then when Vic can't complete his job, he changes gears again and kills him. The first part of that plan just didn't seem realistic. Like, how was Oz going to get that guy, groggy from drugs, out of the basement into a car? And, because you see the reaction after Oz kills him. The reaction is lock down the house and search everybody for weapons. So let's say Oz, gets him out of the basement. How long before they would have walked in the basement, found him gone, and then said, well, lock down the house and search everybody's car? Like, there have been no way Oz would have gotten that guy out of the basement. The only sensible thing to do was to kill him. That was it. So, from his perspective. And then, the ending is Sophia finally teams up with Oswald, but and Oz, sticks the knife in the pocket of one of the soldiers, so now he gets blamed for the murder. Like, these guys are mob guys. They all carry weapons all the time. So just searching guys and finding, you're here at the funeral. Yeah, nobody brings a single weapon at a funeral. No, they'd be armed to the teeth. So that kind of didn't make any sense from a mob standpoint. Now, I know a little more about mafia stuff than most people, but that just seemed to jump to a huge conclusion there. Like, the only way you could have made that work to me would have been if Oz not only planted the knife on him, but there was blood all over it too, right? And then you could say, okay, but he wiped all the blood off, right? You know, they could have said empty your pockets, and they could have forced everybody to empty their pockets on the table. And as he reaches into his pocket, the bloody knife falls out along with the hanky he wrapped it in, and he's got blood on his hands because he grabbed it. And now they're like, oh, they jumped to that conclusion. Like, the blood would have helped. So, I mean, I get what they're trying to do, but I think they're doing a little too much of it. You know, they're trying to do this thing where Oz just keeps switching sides and changing his, schemes and mid-scheme. And, you know, I don't think it worked as well this episode. And Vic stammering. I mean, at one point, you know, towards the end, Oz is like basically telling him he's got to start delivering or he's going to end up in the grave. I don't know why Oz doesn't just kill him at this point, you know, other than maybe setting him up for a later episode to take the fall on a bunch of things. But, I mean, Vic is nobody in his world. And he seems, again, awfully loyal for a guy he barely knows. Vic doesn't have much reason to be loyal to Oz, other than he keeps threatening to kill him. I would like to see Oz throw him money and that he needs it. Like, to me, that would have been a better motivator. Again, it would have been a better script if he already knew Vic, at least tangentially. Maybe he had hired him before, and he had done a little work for him, but now, like, you know, it's the old improv saying, the best relationships to do on stage are ones that are at least 3 months old and less than 3 years. Because in that window of time, you've got two people that know each other and have enough of a history that they could fall back on that, but not too much that it overwhelms you. And the problem with Vic and Oz is they don't have a history, and we're seeing it built, but Vic isn't that important to the show. You know, they literally could have killed him off in the first episode. In this episode, what would it have mattered? They could have just replaced him with anybody. So Vic isn't really growing on me. And he was the weakest link in the first show. So in this show, yeah, they've actually made him weaker. And I mean from a character standpoint. So Oswald is doing, and he complains about it. The character complains in the episode, like, I'm doing all this work, and you're dropping the ball. Yeah, he is. Does Oswald not have anyone else? It seems odd that he wouldn't, being a super smart mob guy. That's something that needs to be addressed too. Now, it's only the second episode. They still could address this. So, for instance, they could do a flashback in which Oswald did have a crew or had a couple of guys, but he either sacrifices them or gets them killed or kills them himself. And that's why he generally operates alone, because the guys around him get killed. Or maybe they'll reveal, you know, he got his brothers killed, or he threw him under the bus to save his own But Sophia's character is interesting. She's getting more interesting. They're really slow walking her deal, but for the most part, okay. Yeah, I'll probably check out the rest of the episode. So far, I'm on board, but yeah, I mean, the stakes are a little too high, I think. It's part of the problem. If they had maybe started a little lower and built to Alberto being killed, might have been better. But they were coming off the movie where Carmine was dead, so I kind of understand it. But, you know, one episode of Alberto being boss and Oz manipulating him before he kills him probably could have helped the show and, given him more of a reason. Because as impulsive as that was in the first episode, you gotta wonder why he hasn't done it again. Right? It's like, he did kill the Maroney guy, granted, but that wasn't impulsive. That was a very calculated risk. So, I don't know. We'll see where this goes. The bar is very high because people have been raving about it. But I at this episode, I'm okay with it. I think it's decent. Still very watchable. Still, Colin Farrell, just amazing in the role, in terms of the look and in terms of the acting. But in terms of the writing, I'm a little underwhelmed on this episode. I want to see it kick up, and maybe just have an episode in which Oz stays on the same side for most of the episode. Maybe have that be the big third act finale rather than, switch back and forth and 5 different times within the same episode. And it seems to be unsustainable what Oz is doing. I get it, he's playing one against the other, but seems like he's got a little too direct line. And again, he keeps going to Maroney and visiting him in person in prison. There's no way the Falcones wouldn't find out about that. So I'm hoping in a later episode Sophia just is like, oh yeah, we found out about your little visits to Maroney or whatever. But we shall see. Still would say, yeah, you should watch it. So far, I'm still on board with it. Penguin episode 2. And that's it for me, Tony D. Little Joan, somewhere in the house. Thanks for tuning in today. We'll see you tomorrow.